This slidecast looks at scope control. In the previous slidecast we looked at the control of the whole project, an overview of the whole thing. Now we're looking at scope in particular. You will recall that scope is the stuff that needs to be done for the job. So when we did scope planning, we took what needed to be built and we broke it down into smaller parts and broke those down into smaller parts and we produced a work breakdown structure. Now what we're talking about is when the project is underway, how do we make sure that we do what we're supposed to do, no more, no less. So we don't do more than what we're supposed to do, that we have planned for to do, and we don't do any less. We do the job that is required, no more, no less. The main problem with that is scope change. As the project proceeds, there may be things that cause the scope to change. It might be the client coming along and saying, oh, I'd like you to make the footpath wider, or I'd like you to add some planting, some trees, or I'd like you to put a different material on the roof if you're building a house. Those are all scope changes known as variances. The client is allowed to do that. That's fine, he's the one that's paying for it, but he needs to acknowledge it, and there needs to be changes to the schedule, the timetable, and the budget. So if he's asking you to do something extra, you're adding extra time to the program, the timetable, and you're adding extra budget or extra money to the budget. So scope change is changing the project scope, adding or deleting work. It will affect time and cost, and so the schedule and budget need adjustment. To control it, the first thing that needs to happen is you need to make sure that the change, the variance, is identified. You can't correct something if you don't know it happened, and in engineering it happens quite a lot. Something will happen, like for example, you'll strike some rock, and you'll just go ahead and just pull it out or something like that, and you won't change the budget, you won't change the program, and then you find that you're sort of running over time and that you're running over budget. So it's very easy in engineering to miss the changes. So one of the things the manager needs to be doing is to be very aware that, oh, wait a minute, this is not what we planned for, this is a variance, I need to do something about this, I need to change the budget, I need to get approval for the extra expenditure, and I need to get approval for the extra time. So that's what that means by agreed upon. You're agreeing it with the client. The client is going to be paying more money. He's going to get his deliverable late. He needs to understand that that's going to happen, and he needs to agree to it. Oftentimes they're not very happy about it, but it needs to be done at the time that the change occurs. Once the client has agreed on it, you change the program, budget, or the other management documents to include that change. So you might add another week to the program, you might add another $10,000-$20,000, whatever it is, to the budget. And now that becomes the revised program is the new program, and the revised budget is the new budget. So when you say you're bringing the project in on time, it may be that there have been a whole lot of changes, and that the budget, the amount of money you spent at the end of the project, is more than what was planned for initially, and that's fine because you will have changed the budget as you went along, so you can still say that you put it in on budget. Now the main problem is, as I said, the client is allowed to change things. That's his right. The problem is when it's uncontrolled. So scope creep is where it's an uncontrolled change. In other words, it happens and you don't do anything about it. You don't change the timetable, you don't change the program, you don't change the budget. It means that you are going to be spending more money, but the budgets will still stay the same. So it's going to look like you have blown out the budget. You will also be finishing later. So it looks like you have finished late, whereas in fact all that's happened is you haven't made an allowance for that change. So scope control, prevention, prevent or minimize variances. Make sure the client is really aware of what you are going to deliver so that they're not going to come along halfway through the project and ask for changes. So remember, variances and changes, same thing. During the planning stage, you need to make very sure that you're covering everything, that the scope includes everything that's required to be done. You need to be looking at the risks. What are the things that could change our scope? It might be the client changing their mind. It might be that we're going to strike rock. So if it was rock was the risk, then you would be doing geotechnical investigations. And when you do find something that's a potential change, you resolve the issue early. The next thing is detection. If a change, a variation does happen, a variance does happen, you identify it the minute it happens. Then you look at what are going to be the cost implications and the time implications. You compare them to your baseline. Remember, the baseline is the budget and program that you set at the end of the planning thing. So you say, okay, we plan to complete the job in 3 months. With this variance, we're now going to take 3.5 months to do it. So you look at that. And you need to be doing this regularly. You need to be having a look at the performance and regularly updating it, regularly trying to find those variances. When a variance happens, you need to resolve it quickly. You need to go to the client immediately. You need to get their agreement on the extra budget, on the extra time. You need to have systems in place where if something happens, that there's a system, you know who to talk to get the budget increased or to get the time increased. And you also need to be recording the lessons learned. What did we learn from this change? Next time, we're going to include that piece of work in our program, so our program will be more accurate next time. That concludes the slide cast. In the next one, we're going to look at how do we control time.